Christmas Eve had always been painted as a time for warmth, family, and togetherness. That's what movies and holiday songs tell you. But in my family, Christmas dinners carried a different weight. They weren't celebrations. They were stages, and my mother was always the director of the play, with carefully chosen favorites, rehearsed praises, and predictable humiliations for the one person she saw as her disappointment. Me. I'm Londyn, and that night, the night that still burns in my memory, I sat at the long oak dining table, surrounded by the flicker of candles, the smell of roasted turkey, and the sound of my siblings laughing. I tried to hold on to a shred of hope that maybe this year would be different. Maybe, just maybe, she would see me. Before I dive into my story, I want to know, where are you watching from today? And as you listen, let me know in the comments how this story makes you feel, or if you've ever experienced something similar. Your thoughts mean a lot to me, and I'd love to hear your perspective. My older sister had just returned from her trip abroad, and my brother boasted about his recent business ventures, which, as I knew, were funded by loans he hadn't paid back. But my mother listened with sparkling eyes, nodding, laughing at every word as if he were a genius in the making. "And look at Vanessa," she said, lifting her glass of wine. "So accomplished, so refined. Traveling the world, building connections. She's truly the pride of this family." My sister smiled with that satisfied glow, the kind she always wore when she was being praised in front of me. "And Trevor," my mother went on, "such an ambitious young man, always thinking big. I don't know where this family would be without his ideas." I sat there, fork resting untouched against my plate, listening to every word, each one digging deeper into me. My chest tightened. My mother didn't even glance my way. It was as if my chair was empty. Then it happened. She finally turned, her eyes narrowing, her lips curving into that cold smile I had known since childhood. And with a voice loud enough for everyone at the table to hear, she said the words that would never leave me. "You're the most useless child we have." The room froze. Forks clattered softly against plates as silence swallowed the laughter. My heart skipped, then pounded so loud I thought everyone could hear it. My sister's smirk widened, my brother looked away uncomfortably, and my father cleared his throat but said nothing. It wasn't the first time she'd called me names, but never like this, never in front of everyone at Christmas dinner. I felt my throat close, my hands trembling under the table. Every insult I had swallowed over the years came rushing back at once. Every time she ignored my achievements. Every time she acted like I was invisible. I thought about the nights I had worked 2 jobs just to pay for my own college while Trevor's tuition was quietly covered by family savings. I thought about the times I babysat Vanessa's children so she could travel, while no one ever thanked me. I thought about the long hours I spent helping my father organize bills when he was sick, only for my mother to dismiss it as what any child should do. The weight of all those years pressed on me, but for the first time, something inside me broke free instead of breaking down. I looked up at her. For once I didn't look away. For once I didn't stay silent. Everyone's eyes were on me. My breath shook as I rose slowly from my chair, napkins slipping from my lap onto the floor. The air was heavy, so heavy I could almost hear it hum. My mother tilted her head, expecting me to shrink back, to nod quietly, to accept her verdict as I always had. But I didn't. I felt my voice building inside me, the words I had buried for years pressing at my lips. And for the first time I decided to answer back. I stood there, my hands trembling slightly, though I tried to keep them steady by gripping the edge of the table. My mother's words echoed in my head, "The most useless child we have." It wasn't the insult itself that broke me open, it was the years of silence that came before it. The endless patience. The quiet endurance. All of it snapped that night. For a second no one spoke. I could feel the weight of their stares, the expectation that I would do what I had always done. Lower my head, laugh awkwardly, pretend it didn't hurt. That was my role in this family, wasn't it? The invisible one. The one who absorbs it all in silence. But not anymore. I lifted my eyes to hers. My voice came out steady though my chest was burning. "You call me useless? Do you even know what I've done for this family?" The words shocked them. My sister raised her eyebrows, my brother shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and even my father finally looked at me directly. I didn't stop. The floodgates had opened. When Trevor was drowning in debt last year, who do you think paid off part of his loan so he wouldn't lose his car? It wasn't you, and it certainly wasn't the family's precious savings. It was me. Out of the paycheck I worked for. Trevor's head snapped up, his face pale. You, he began, but I cut him off with a sharp glance. And Vanessa. Remember when your credit card was maxed out? Who quietly paid the overdue amount so you wouldn't ruin your credit score? You never even asked how it magically got fixed, did you? That was me too. Because I couldn't stand watching you cry about it. My sister froze, her smirk gone, replaced with a flush of embarrassment. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing there was no way to twist it. And Dad, I said, turning toward him now, softer but still firm. When you got sick 2 years ago and the bills piled up, who sat with you night after night, sorting through them, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks? I did. Not because anyone asked me. Not because I was looking for recognition. But because it was the right thing to do. I turned back to my mother. Her face was rigid, her lips pressed into a thin line as if she could will my words away. All my life I've been here. Working. Helping. Filling in the cracks you all left behind. But I never asked for applause. I never asked for recognition. And yet tonight, after everything, you dare to look me in the eye and call me useless. My voice cracked slightly at that last word, but I forced myself to keep my gaze steady. The silence was unbearable. No one moved. The candles flickered as if the air itself had shifted. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You know what's funny? I always thought maybe if I just worked harder, did more, gave more, one day you'd look at me and be proud. But I see now, you never wanted to see me at all. It was easier to pretend I was nothing than to admit you needed me. Vanessa shifted in her seat, uncomfortable. Trevor avoided my eyes completely. My father swallowed hard, his face unreadable. But my mother, she just stared at me, fury simmering beneath her calm mask. Finally, she said coldly, "You think helping a little makes you important? Families need achievers. Leaders. Not shadows." Her words stung, but I felt something else rise in me. Not pain, not fear. Strength. I'd rather be a shadow, I said slowly, than a parasite who takes and calls it success. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Trevor's hands clenched into fists under the table. I leaned forward slightly, looking directly at my mother. Useless? Well, the truth is, I've been the glue holding this family together while you pretended it was perfect. But not anymore. If being useful means letting you step on me, then I'd rather be useless in your eyes than destroyed in mine. The silence after that was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the old clock on the wall. I placed my napkin gently on the table, straightened my shoulders, and took one last look around. Their faces, pale, stunned, ashamed, would stay etched in my memory forever. Without another word, I pushed my chair back, the scrape echoing like thunder in the quiet room, and walked away from the table. My legs were shaking, but every step felt lighter than the last. For the first time in my life, I had answered back. And though part of me was terrified of what would come next, another part of me knew this was only the beginning. I didn't go back to the table. I walked out into the cold, the air so sharp it felt like glass in my lungs. The neighborhood was strung with lights and inflatable snowmen, the kind of cheerful exaggeration that always made me roll my eyes. That night it felt like the world was mocking me. Cheer up, it's Christmas, as if a season could fix a lifetime. I stood on the sidewalk and let the sting in my eyes thaw into real tears, the kind that don't ask permission. When they stopped, a quieter thing replaced them: resolve. I went home to my small apartment with its second-hand couch and the crooked bookshelf I kept meaning to fix, and I did something I had never done in my life. I turned off my phone. 4 days. No texts, no apologies that aren't apologies, no, "You know your mother didn't mean it," from people who never once told her to stop. Silence for once was mine. The first week was a strange detox. I woke up expecting a crisis that needed me. Vanessa's sitter canceling, Trevor's car randomly getting towed, Dad not understanding a bill. Nothing came. Without their emergencies, my day felt too big, like a coat 2 sizes too large. I filled it awkwardly at first. Long walks, cheap coffee, a library card I kept forgetting to renew. I started making lists, things that were mine and mine alone. It felt childish to write "by dish soap" next to graduate certificate in analytics, but both were acts of care I could measure. Work became the anchor. I was a junior operations coordinator at a small logistics firm then, invisible in all the usual ways, until my boss was out sick during quarter end and I kept the whole calendar from collapsing. "You have a brain for structure," he said when he got back, surprised as if I'd borrowed one for the week. He let me sit in on vendor calls after that. I stayed late and learned to build dashboards, the kind that turned chaos into lines and boxes and little green arrows. There was something about seeing the shape of a mess that made it manageable. You could fix a thing once you could see it. On Tuesdays, I began going to a therapist in a small office above a bakery. The place always smelled like sugar and yeast. "How do you feel?" she'd ask, which used to make me want to leave through the window. I could tell you how everyone else felt. It took longer to answer for myself. Sometimes all I had was, "I'm tired of apologizing for existing." Other times I talked until my throat hurt. The time Mom opened my report card and said decent, the way Vanessa learned my tells and used them, the way Dad's quiet made me question my own sight. We dug through that house of mirrors week after week until I could recognize which reflections weren't me. I got good at small rituals. I bought a plant I had no business owning, the kind with glossy leaves that curl if you look at them wrong. I named it Theo. Keeping it alive felt like proof I could care for a thing without disappearing into it. I learned to cook one meal well, lemon chicken with roasted potatoes, and I made it on Sundays, leaving leftovers labeled for nobody but myself. I hung a cheap print in the hallway that said "Build what you were denied." It was corny. It also worked. When my lease ended, I moved to a brighter place 2 train stops away, a 3rd-floor walk-up that overlooked a laundromat and a tree that refused to die. I bought a sturdy table, oak heavy, and assembled it myself with an Allen key that left a dent in my palm. I sat at it and paid my own bills on my own timeline without anyone else's crisis reshuffling the pile. That table became something more than a surface. It was a line drawn in wood. Of course there were setbacks. Promotions dangled and didn't land. The night class I enrolled in, data analytics, nearly broke me the week we learned joins. I cried on the train once quietly because a stranger bumped me and said, "Watch it," with a tone I knew too well. But I kept going because I had finally learned which kind of pain leads somewhere and which kind just keeps you where you are. Friends found me or I found them. Nia from accounting, who said, "You're funny when you're not bracing for impact," and invited me to trivia nights even when I said no 3 times. Mateo from my analytics cohort, who could make a dataset sound like a love story and who taught me to celebrate tiny wins like they were national holidays. We formed a kind of chosen scaffolding around one another. Potluck dinners, shared spreadsheets, walking each other home when the world felt larger than we were. I didn't see my family for months. Birthdays passed. Easter, Mother's Day, the 4th of July. Holidays that used to be stations on a track where I did not choose the destination. Sometimes the silence was a relief so complete it frightened me. Other times it was a scratch at the door that made sleep slow to come. I'd catch myself rehearsing arguments for a conversation that wasn't happening, a chorus of, "If only you had said," and "Next time I'll." Old reflexes die with all the drama of opera singers. Near the end of that year, my boss called me into his office and asked if I'd be interested in piloting a new position. Operations analyst. "You've been doing half the job already," he said, flipping through a folder. "Might as well pay you for it." I went to the bathroom and cried into 3 paper towels, the cheap kind that leave lint on your face. Then I signed the paperwork and asked for an extra week to finish the analytics certificate. He said yes before I finished the sentence. With the raise, I paid off the last of my student loans, one quiet click at a time. I transferred $100 into a savings account every payday, the way my father used to fold a 10 into my sock drawer when I was 9 and tell me to pretend it was a secret. I sent no more secret money to anyone else. When guilt skittered across my skin, I treated it like the anxious thought it was. A smoke alarm without a fire. The first time I ran into my mother after the dinner, it was at the grocery store. She was alone, comparing brands of something with a picture of a sailboat on it. I felt all the heat in my body rush to my face, that old reflex sprinting down the hallway of my nervous system. She glanced up, saw me, paused. Her mouth parted as if to shape my name. Mine stayed shut. I nodded politely like you do to strangers you've seen at the bus stop and walked on. In the parking lot I sat in my car and shook, not with fear but with the thing that comes after. You realize you survived a moment that used to define you. A year became 2. My plant lived. My table held. Work was a ladder I climbed without anyone yanking it away and telling me I looked silly. I finished my certificate and started mentoring the intern who reminded me of myself at 20. A hurricane girl trying to pour herself into a paper cup. "There's nothing wrong with the size of you," I told her once in an empty conference room that smelled like dry erase markers. "You just need a bigger container." She laughed, didn't get it, got it later. Every December I checked my phone carefully like maybe the month carried a virus. The memories were stubborn. So was I. I built new ones. I baked cookies with Nia that came out shaped like falling stars because we never mastered the cutter. I let Mateo drag me to midnight mass even though faith for me was more of a quiet room than a song. I learned that some traditions are just habits with better marketing. And then in the third December the quiet cracked. It was a Thursday. End of quarter again, the office humming with the particular chaos I was now paid to love. At 6:12 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail out of reflex, then listened to it in the elevator, my thumb hovering as if the message might bite. Londyn, it's Dad. The elevator felt too small. He sounded older, time-stamped in a way voices shouldn't be. He cleared his throat in the message, a sound I knew like a weather pattern. Could you call me back when you have a minute? No rush. Just, when you can. He paused. I could hear, faintly, a TV in the background, the laugh track of a sitcom trying to convince someone that life is simple. Your mother is, well. Just call me sweetheart. Sweetheart. The word, once a balm, now felt like a bead you find in the carpet from a bracelet you didn't know had broken. I stood in the lobby with the security guard watching football highlights over the desk and tried to decide whether 3 years was enough time to become a person who could return that call. I didn't call him back that night. I went home, fed Theo, and sat at my oak table. I opened my laptop and stared at the empty email I'd started to myself titled What We Owe and What We Don't. Then I closed it again. I made lemon chicken and ate it standing up. I washed the dish by hand because sometimes doing one small complete thing is the only way to keep from drowning in the incomplete. The next morning there was a second voicemail. Dad again. No sitcom this time. Quieter house, quicker words. Trevor's in trouble, he said. It's not little this time. He didn't say we need you. He didn't have to. I felt the old scaffolding inside me tense, brace for the weight. Then I felt the new structure I had built push back, not unkindly but firmly. I listened to the message twice, then once more, and set the phone face down like it might spill if I wasn't careful. The truth was simple. I had spent years learning to live without the emergencies that used to define me. But life, like any stubborn story, has a way of circling back to its inciting incident. And somewhere between the second voicemail and the quiet of my apartment, I knew. The past was walking toward me again, not as a ghost this time, but as a knock I could choose to answer or not. When I finally called my father back, his voice carried the weariness of someone who had been holding a secret too heavy for too long. He spoke carefully, as if testing every word before letting it pass his lips. Trevor's in deeper than any of us realized, he began. The loans weren't just from banks. They're from people who don't like waiting for repayment. He's defaulted, and they're threatening legal action. More than that. It's bad, Londyn. I sat in silence, the phone pressed so hard to my ear it ached. Trevor had always been reckless, but I hadn't imagined the scale. I thought of the nights he bragged about his ventures, the empty boasts my mother dressed in gold. Behind all of it was rot. And Vanessa? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Dad sighed. Her husband left. Took the savings, the house. She and the kids are back living with your mother. His pause lengthened. And your mother isn't well. Health issues. Stress makes it worse. The doctors want her on medication, but she refuses to listen. A strange cocktail of emotions swirled in me. Sadness, yes. A kind of dull pity, maybe. But also anger. Sharp, clean, undeniable anger. I had carried them all in silence for so long, and now, when their towers had crumbled, they reached for me. She wants to see you, Dad added softly. I almost laughed. The same woman who looked me in the eyes 3 years ago and declared me useless, was now asking for me. Need was a language she understood better than love. For days I wrestled with it. Old habits whispered in my ear. Their family, Londyn. Family helps family. But hadn't that phrase been a chain around my neck all my life? How many times had I been the quiet fixer, the shadow that kept their reputations intact? I replayed her words in my head, the ones that had burned me into silence. You're the most useless child we have. And then I replayed my own words from that night. If being useful means letting you step on me, I'd rather be useless in your eyes. Still, something in me wanted to see it with my own eyes, to see what had become of them. When I finally drove back to the house I had once called home, the sight shocked me. The garden, once meticulously kept by my mother, was wild, overgrown. The curtains sagged. Paint peeled at the corners of the windows. It looked less like a home than a house someone had given up on. Inside, the atmosphere was even heavier. Vanessa sat on the couch, her children sprawled on the floor with tired faces. Trevor paced, phone in hand, muttering about solutions that sounded more like excuses. My mother sat in her armchair, thinner than I remembered, her sharpness dulled but not gone. When her eyes met mine, she didn't scowl. She didn't sneer. She simply said, almost whispering, "You came." I didn't reply. Vanessa tried first. "Londyn, we just need a little help getting back on our feet. You're doing well now, aren't you?" Her tone carried that same entitled lilt, the expectation that of course I'd save her again. Trevor followed quickly, his words rushing. "You know how business cycles are. A bad streak, that's all. A little cash flow problem. If you could just—" I held up a hand, cutting him off. My silence was sharper than words. Then my mother spoke. Her voice was weaker, but the manipulation was still there, cloaked in fragility. "Families need each other, Londyn. You can't turn your back now. Not when we need you." The room spun with déjà vu. I had heard this song my whole life. Family helps family. Family forgives. Family sacrifices. But now the chorus had a different rhythm. They needed me. And that truth was its own kind of power. I looked around at them. The golden children stripped of their crowns. The mother who once humiliated me now leaning on that same useless child to save her kingdom. It struck me in that moment. I wasn't the shadow anymore. I was the one standing in the light, and they were the ones blinking, trying to adjust. I didn't answer right away. I wanted them to feel the silence, to sit in the weight of it. Because the next words I spoke would change everything. I stood in the middle of that living room, the one where I had once been scolded for speaking too loudly, laughed at for dreaming too big, silenced for existing at all. But this time it was different. I wasn't the girl swallowing back tears at Christmas dinner. I was a woman who had built her own life without them, and they knew it. Their eyes begged, even if their words didn't. Vanessa tried to look pitiful, Trevor desperate, my mother fragile. My father kept glancing at me as though hoping I'd play the savior again, slip into my old role. But I didn't sit down. I stayed standing, arms crossed, as if the weight of their need couldn't touch me. "You need me now," I said quietly, the words slicing through the tension. Trevor started, "It's not like that. Don't lie to me." My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't pull it back. "It is exactly like that. For years I was the invisible one. The one you called useless, remember?" I turned to my mother. Her eyes darted away, but I didn't let her escape. "That Christmas you said I was the most useless child you had. Do you remember?" Her silence was answer enough. I stepped closer. "Well, look around now. Who's the one you're calling for? Who's the one you need?" No one spoke. Vanessa's cheeks burned red, Trevor's jaw clenched, and my father's shoulders sagged as if he knew there was no defense left. "You built me into the shadow of this family," I continued, my voice steady now. "Every achievement dismissed, every effort ignored, every sacrifice hidden so the world could keep believing they," I gestured at Trevor and Vanessa, "were the shining stars. Me. I was the ghost you only noticed when you needed something done. Until that night." I felt my breath hitch, but I pressed on. "That night you called me useless, I decided something. Never again would I define myself by your approval. Never again would I bend until I broke just to prove my worth to people who never cared to see it." Vanessa bit her lip, tears forming. "Londyn, we were wrong. We should have treated you better." I cut her off with a shake of my head. "It's too late for apologies you only make when you're desperate. Regret isn't the same as change." Trevor leaned forward, his voice rising. "You can't just leave us like this. We're family." That word, family, twisted in my chest. How many times had they used it as a leash? "Family," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Family doesn't humiliate their own at Christmas dinner. Family doesn't use someone's sacrifices and then erase them. Family doesn't wait until their own lives are in ruins to suddenly remember the one they left behind." My mother finally spoke, her voice cracking with something between pride and shame. "We only wanted you to be stronger, Londyn. Maybe we went too far, but it was for your own good." "No," I said firmly, my voice rising for the first time. "It was never for my good. It was for your comfort. So you could keep your illusions intact while I carried the weight you never acknowledged. And you know what? I am stronger. But not because of you. In spite of you. The words hung heavy in the air. I stepped back, taking a slow breath. I don't owe you my success. I don't owe you my strength. And I don't owe you my rescue. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Their faces were pale, broken. For the first time they were forced to confront the truth. The useless child had become the only one strong enough to survive. I walked toward the door, pausing only once to look back. If being useful means destroying myself to save you, then I'd rather be useless forever. Remember that the next time you think of me. And with that, I left them sitting in the ruins they had built for themselves. I didn't look back when I left the house that day. The air outside was cold, sharp, cleansing. I drew it deep into my lungs and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom without guilt. For so long I thought my worth was tied to saving them, fixing them, carrying them. But walking away proved a truth I'd always been too afraid to face. They had never truly wanted me, only what I could give. And I was done giving to people who only took. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet. I half expected the phone to ring endlessly, demanding explanations, hurling accusations, or begging for another chance. Instead there was silence. Maybe they were too proud, or maybe they finally realized I wasn't coming back to play the role they had written for me. I poured myself into the life I had built. My work, my friends, the small rituals that were mine alone. I took on projects that scared me, the kind that once would have made me second-guess every step. I started mentoring younger women at my company, women who reminded me of the version of myself who used to sit at holiday dinners, small and invisible. To them I said the words I had needed back then. You are not useless. You are not invisible. You are enough even if no one around you can see it yet. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to believe those words for myself too. Did I think about my family? Of course. The mind doesn't erase a wound just because it's scarred. I wondered if Trevor ever got out of debt, if Vanessa found her footing, if my mother ever admitted the truth even to herself. But those thoughts no longer consumed me. Their story was theirs to live. Mine was finally my own. One December, 3 years after the confrontation, I received a card in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single line written in my mother's careful, slanted handwriting. You were stronger than we knew. I see it now. I stared at the words for a long time. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was an acknowledgement. A crack in the wall she had built around herself. I didn't cry and I didn't rush to call her. I simply folded the card, placed it in a drawer and let it be. Some things don't need answers. Because I had already answered, not with a single speech but with the life I chose to live. A life where I was no longer the shadow in the corner, no longer the family's scapegoat, no longer the useless child. I was proof that survival isn't about pleasing the ones who break you. It's about standing when they expect you to fall, building when they expect you to crumble, shining when they expect you to disappear. And maybe that's the real message I want to leave with you. Sometimes the people who call you useless are the very ones who fear your strength the most. Because deep down they know one day you won't need them, but they will need you. That day came for me. And when it does for you, I hope you remember. You don't owe them your rescue. You owe yourself your freedom. So tell me, if it were you standing at that Christmas dinner, what would you have said?